This tutorial is designed to show you how to do a t-test in Microsoft Excel. I'm using the Mac version of Excel, so again, directions might be a little bit different on the PC or on a different version of Excel than the one that I'm using, but it should be transferable with a little bit of thinking. A t-test allows you to answer the question if there is a difference between two groups. And in this case, I'm interested in wondering, is there a difference in the initial height between my control and my treatment seedlings? To answer that question, I might just be tempted to look at my graph. And by looking at my graph right here, I can see that the means are pretty close. And if I look at where the standard error bars are, it seems that they're overlapping with one another. But that would just be a guess. And as good as guessing might be, it's not going to stand up scientifically. So we actually need to do a t-test to figure out with some scientific backing whether or not these two groups are different from one another. To do that is using a simple formula. You're going to pick a cell and you're going to type in it equals. And again, if you recall, using Excel, when you type in equals, it tells Excel that you're going to enter a formula. In this case, I'm going to enter T and then test, and then open parentheses. Now, the t-test, as I said, helps us to know whether or not there's a difference between two groups. And so when you're looking at what needs to be input into this formula, the first thing you need is something that's called an array 1. An array 1 is just simply a set of data. And in this case, it's going to be our treatment data, because I'm interested in knowing whether there's a difference between our treatment and our controls. So I'm going to go over here and actually select all of my treatment data. It's really important that you don't just choose the mean, but that you actually take all of the data, because that's going to be useful for calculating your t-test. Once you've selected the first array, hit comma. Now Excel is asking you to put in a second array. And again, if you recall our question, we're interested in finding out whether there's a difference in the height of our treatment versus our control sunflower seedlings. So the second array is going to be selected, and that is our control heights. When you're done with that, hit comma. Now there's two other pieces of information that we need to tell Excel about the test. The first has to do with the tails. In this case, and in most cases, we are interested in whether the difference between the groups might be bigger than or it might be smaller. So it could happen on either end of the distribution. In this case, we're going to choose 2, because that gives us the option that the distribution differences could happen on the high end or on the low end. Then hit comma. The very last thing that we need to decide is what kind of a t-test we're doing. What is the type? And there are 3 different types of the t-test. Your computer may actually tell you what those 3 types are, but I'm briefly just going to overview them. The first one is a paired test. You would use this if you, say, for example, had tested one mouse on a diet, and then you subjected that mouse to exercise, and then you tested that same mouse again. That's called a paired t-test, and this is only used when you're measuring the same specimen kind of pre and post. And since that's not what we're doing here, type 1 isn't going to be the best option for us. Type 2 and type 3 allow you to measure different specimens, such as we are for our treatment and our control plants. They are completely different plants. And they give us 2 different options related to what could be estimated as the standard deviation or the variance. We, in our purposes, are going to choose type 3. And we're choosing type 3 because if we look at our standard deviations, they're quite different. In my case, they were 12 and 6. Those indicate to me that there's probably different levels of variation within my treatment and within my control groups, and so we're going to choose that. Then close the parentheses, hit enter, and you're going to get a value. This value that you get out is what we call a p-value. And this p-value is compared to a critical p-value of 0.05. And you can look at your notes from class about how to interpret that p-value, but this is the p-value that you are comparing it against. And that wraps up the t-test.